In the heart of the Ottoman Empire, an army existed unlike any the world had ever seen. They were not born into nobility, nor did they inherit their position. Taken as children, separated from their families, and raised within the empire's most disciplined military system, they were transformed into something far more powerful than ordinary soldiers. These warriors became the Janissaries, an elite force feared across Europe and the Middle East for their unwavering loyalty, brutal efficiency, and unmatched discipline. Kings and generals trembled at the mere mention of their name. Yet the same army that helped build an empire would one day grow powerful enough to threaten it from within. The origins of the Janissaries, from the Devshirme System to an elite army. The rise of the Janissaries represents one of the most unusual military developments in the history of the Ottoman Empire. Unlike most armies of the medieval world, which were built from tribal loyalties, feudal obligations, or mercenary contracts, this force was constructed through a carefully organized state system. The Janissaries were not simply soldiers. They were the product of a political and social experiment designed to create a military body loyal only to the Ottoman Sultan. The foundation of this system is generally traced to the reign of Murad I in the 14th century. As the Ottoman state expanded across Anatolia and into the Balkans, the rulers of the empire recognized the need for a permanent, professional army. Early Ottoman military power relied heavily on cavalry warriors known as Timariates, who were granted land in exchange for military service. While effective in many situations, this system had limitations. Cavalry forces were difficult to control during prolonged campaigns, and their loyalty could sometimes be tied more strongly to local interests than to the central authority of the Sultan. To solve this problem, the Ottoman administration created a new type of infantry unit directly connected to the palace and the central government. This force would eventually become known as the Janissaries. Their formation was closely tied to a recruitment system called the Devshirme System, a policy that played a crucial role in shaping the character and discipline of the corps. The Devshirme System operated primarily in the Christian regions of the Balkans under Ottoman control. At regular intervals, imperial officials traveled through villages and selected young boys, usually between the ages of 8 and 16. These children were taken from their families and transported to the Ottoman capital or other administrative centers. Although the practice was controversial and often feared by local communities, the Ottoman authorities viewed it as a way to cultivate loyal servants of the state. Once recruited, the boys were converted to Islam and placed within a carefully structured educational system. Some were sent to Turkish farming families in Anatolia, where they learned the language, customs, and cultural traditions of the empire. This stage of the process was intended to reshape their identity and prepare them for life within Ottoman society. After this initial training period, the most capable recruits were brought into palace schools or military academies. Here they received intensive instruction in physical discipline, religious education, and military tactics. Those who demonstrated exceptional intelligence could enter the elite palace service and potentially rise to powerful administrative positions within the empire. Others were directed into the ranks of the Janissaries, where they would become members of the empire's growing professional infantry. What made the Janissaries unique was the strict discipline under which they lived. Unlike many soldiers of the time, they were forbidden to marry during the early centuries of the corps, and they were required to live collectively in barracks. Their lives were regulated by a strong code of loyalty and obedience. Every aspect of their training emphasized unity, discipline, and unwavering devotion to the Ottoman ruler. This system produced soldiers who were remarkably organized and effective on the battlefield. While many European armies of the 15th century still relied heavily on feudal levies, the Janissaries operated as a standing army that could be mobilized quickly and deployed with precision. Their training also included the early use of firearms, which helped them adapt to the changing nature of warfare in the late medieval period. Over time, the Janissaries became not only a powerful military force, but also a symbol of the centralized authority of the Ottoman state. Their origins in the Devshirme system ensured that their loyalty was directed primarily toward the Sultan rather than toward regional elites or tribal leaders. This structure allowed the Ottoman Empire to build one of the most formidable and disciplined armies of its era, laying the foundation for centuries of military expansion. The power and discipline of the Janissaries, the Ottoman Empire's most feared soldiers. At the height of the Ottoman Empire, few military forces inspired as much fear and respect as the Janissaries. By the 15th and 16th centuries, this elite infantry corps had become the backbone of the Ottoman military machine. Their reputation did not arise simply from their numbers, but from their extraordinary discipline, organization, and ability to adapt to new forms of warfare. In an age when many armies still relied on temporary levies and loosely organized feudal soldiers, the Janissaries represented something fundamentally different, a permanent, professional fighting force trained to operate with precision and unity. Discipline was the foundation of Janissary power. From the moment recruits entered the corps, their lives were governed by strict rules designed to create absolute loyalty and cohesion. They lived together in barracks, trained constantly, and followed a rigid hierarchy that emphasized obedience to commanding officers and, above all, loyalty to the Ottoman Sultan. Individual ambition was secondary to collective strength. This system created a sense of unity rarely seen in medieval armies, where soldiers often served for personal gain or local allegiance. The daily routine of a janissary revolved around training, physical endurance, and military preparation. Soldiers practiced formation tactics, weapon handling, and coordinated battlefield maneuvers. Their drills were designed to ensure that large groups of infantry could move and fight as a single organized body. This discipline allowed the Janissaries to maintain order even in the chaos of battle, giving them a decisive advantage against less organized opponents. Another key factor behind their power was their early adoption of firearms. While many European forces were still transitioning from traditional medieval weapons to gunpowder technology, the Janissaries quickly embraced the use of muskets and artillery. Their ability to combine disciplined infantry formations with firearms made them extremely effective in siege warfare and open battle alike. Organized ranks of Janissary musketeers could deliver coordinated volleys of gunfire, weakening enemy lines before close combat even began. The effectiveness of the Janissaries became dramatically visible during major military campaigns of the Ottoman Empire. One of the most famous examples was the Fall of Constantinople, when the Ottoman army captured the ancient Byzantine capital after a massive siege. During this campaign, Janissary units played a crucial role in the final assault on the city's walls. Their discipline, coordination, and relentless pressure helped break the defenses of a city that had resisted conquerors for nearly 1,000 years. As Ottoman expansion continued across southeastern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, the presence of Janissary forces often determined the outcome of battles. European commanders quickly recognized the threat posed by these highly organized infantry units. Reports from diplomats, travelers, and soldiers described the Janissaries as fearless, relentless, and almost machine-like in their battlefield coordination. Their reputation spread across Europe, contributing to the image of the Ottoman Empire as an unstoppable military power. Despite their fierce battlefield reputation, the strength of the Janissaries did not come from aggression alone. Their true advantage lay in discipline and structure. Orders were executed quickly and precisely, and soldiers were trained to maintain formation even under heavy attack. This reliability made them invaluable during complex military operations such as sieges, defensive campaigns, and large-scale coordinated assaults. The Janissaries also served as a visible symbol of the centralized authority of the Ottoman state. Because they were directly connected to the Sultan and the imperial administration, their presence reinforced the power of the central government. In many ways, they represented the transformation of warfare during the late medieval and early modern periods, when professional standing armies began to replace feudal military systems. Through discipline, advanced training, and technological adaptation, the Janissaries became one of the most feared military forces of their era. Their success helped transform the Ottoman Empire into one of the most dominant political and military powers in the world, shaping the balance of power across 3 continents for centuries. Corruption and collapse. The end of the Janissaries. For centuries, the Janissaries stood at the center of the military power of the Ottoman Empire. Their discipline, organization, and loyalty had helped transform the empire into one of the most formidable political and military powers of the early modern world. Yet the very institution that had once strengthened the Ottoman state gradually became one of its greatest internal challenges. Over time, the structure that had produced an elite fighting force began to weaken, and the Janissaries slowly transformed from a disciplined military corps into a powerful political faction. One of the most significant changes occurred in the recruitment system. The original strength of the Janissaries had depended on the strict selection process of the Devshirme System, which brought young boys into the empire's carefully controlled training system. These recruits were raised within Ottoman institutions and developed a strong sense of loyalty to the sultan and the state. However, beginning in the 16th and 17th centuries, this system gradually declined. Positions within the Janissary Corps increasingly became hereditary, allowing the sons of existing members to join without undergoing the rigorous training that had once defined the institution. As this transformation took place, the discipline that had once defined the Corps began to erode. Many Janissaries started to pursue commercial activities, engaging in trade, crafts, and urban business life. While such activities provided additional income, they also shifted attention away from military training and readiness. Barracks life became less strict, and the professional identity that had once united the Corps slowly weakened. At the same time, the Janissaries gained increasing influence within the political life of the empire. Because they were stationed in major cities, especially the imperial capital, they were in a position to influence events at the highest levels of government. Over the centuries, they became deeply involved in palace politics and sometimes acted as a decisive force in struggles for power. Their support could determine whether a ruler remained on the throne or was removed from power. This political involvement created a dangerous imbalance within the Ottoman system. The Janissaries were originally designed to serve the state, but their growing influence meant that they could also challenge it. Several sultans faced revolts from Janissary units when attempting to introduce reforms or changes to the military structure. In many cases, these uprisings forced rulers to abandon modernization efforts that might have strengthened the empire's military capabilities. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the Ottoman leadership increasingly recognized that the empire's military institutions were falling behind those of European powers. Modern armies in Europe were adopting new training methods, advanced weaponry, and more efficient command systems. Some Ottoman reformers sought to introduce similar changes within the empire. However, these reforms were often resisted by the Janissaries, who feared that modernization would threaten their privileges and influence. The conflict between reform and resistance eventually reached a decisive moment during the reign of Mahmud II. Determined to restore the strength of the Ottoman state, Mahmud II planned to replace the outdated Janissary system with a modern army trained along European lines. When the Janissaries learned of these plans, they revolted, hoping to force the Sultan to abandon the reforms. Instead of retreating, Mahmud II took a dramatic and unprecedented step. In 1826, he ordered loyal military forces to suppress the Janissary uprising. Artillery was used against their barracks, and thousands of Janissaries were killed, executed, or exiled. This event became known as the Auspicious Incident, a turning point in Ottoman history that marked the official destruction of the Janissary Corps. With the elimination of the Janissaries, the Ottoman Empire began the process of building a new, modernized military system. Although the Corps had once been a symbol of imperial strength, its decline illustrated how institutions that resist change can eventually undermine the very power they were created to protect. The rise and fall of the Janissaries remains one of the most striking examples of how military institutions can shape and ultimately